The knock came at 11:52 p.m. I know because I already crawled out of bed at that point, taking a long, irritated glance at the alarm clock before staggering out of bed for a piss. I've been deep in the fog of fatigue when there it was. Our thin walls shuddered and shook. My wife groaned from behind me. "I got it," I called over my shoulder, grumbling my way down the hall. I rubbed my groggy eyes and peered out through the peephole. My blood ran cold, washing through my veins like an unwelcome ice bath before I locked the chain into place and staggered back. Pudgy and pale, the waffle-like face that stared back at me was instantly recognizable. Our landlord, Jerry Eisen, was on another late-night mission. It wouldn't have been surprising if not for the fact that he'd been killed over a month ago. Fatigued, drunk, I wandered right into our bathroom, falling over the toilet like an anchor in the storm and unleashing my bladder in a violent rush. Jerry's at the door, I thought, followed immediately by Jerry's dead. How do you make sense of something so incomprehensible? You don't. I finished peeing and crawled back into bed. By the time I woke back up, it was nothing more than some vague fever dream. According to my wife, I had always had a fiery imagination and was, I quote, an active sleeper. No harm, no foul. Just another dream that would melt into the big old bucket of weird crap that came before it. If I brought it up, I'd just get a look of begrudgingly indulgence that my insides burn. Not worth it. Not at all. So, we ate breakfast, drank our coffee, got ready for the day ahead. I'd almost forgotten until we swung the front door open, and there sat a note, clear as day, taped
Henry
to the
Bakery.
other side.
7-day notice. Vacate or face repercussions.
That's
Signed
weird,
at the bar.
my wife said,
Jerry
brows furrowed.
Eisen.
Why would they be signing in his name? I thought they sold the property 3 weeks ago. They did, I muttered, flipping the note over and back again, taking in every inch of it. It was from the same off-white notepad Jerry had always kept in his front pocket, the one he whipped out to take notes of every interaction, every violation. The reason Jerry forgot nothing, missed nothing. For instance, we've been able to sneak our cat into every other apartment we lived in, with nobody the wiser. Within a week, Jerry had caught its nose peeking out from the curtain. Charlie's been living with my folks ever since, until our lease runs out. And they wouldn't, I continued. Speaking of the lease, the new owners had come by as soon as the sale cleared to see if we wanted to re-sign. They were a bigger company, complexes all over the city. They had their own embellished stationery with a corporate name emblazoned on the bottom. They wouldn't be using our old slumlord's name to conduct business if they could help it. And why does it only say my name? It just got weirder and weirder the longer I looked at it. My wife had already lost interest, busying herself with slavering up her toast, sipping at her still steaming mug of coffee. She glanced over at me, brows raised. Hmm, it just says my name. I turned to show it to her, pointing near the top. We're both on the lease. Why wouldn't it say both our names? I guess I can stay, she said with a shrug. I must have made a face because she rolled her eyes, irritation already creasing the lines around her lips. Come on. It's obviously some sort of fluke. We have things to do today. Can you please get ready? I knew my wife. This was clearly one of those situations that if I kept it up, a fight would be inevitable. I couldn't understand why she wasn't equally curious, but I tucked that line of inquiry away. I also tucked the note away in my sock drawer, making a mental note to call the office on Monday. Even with the note in the dresser and the subject off of the table, it still managed to sour our mood for the day. All we had to do was run errands, but Shelley was short and dismissive, if not, downright resentful the entire time. I couldn't so much as pick out a bag of apples without it being obvious egregious error in judgment. By the time we made it out for lunch, we were barely speaking. It was one of our worst days in months. Um, Maybe when we get inside, we can sit down and talk, I suggested meekly as we began to unload the car outside of our apartment. Shelley grabbed her half of the bags and slammed the car door behind her. Hey, just leave me alone. I collected the rest of the groceries and huffed my way up the stairs, just in time to see our front door slam shut behind her. On it, another note was stuck.
Henry Baker, 6 days. Get out.
Shelley had dropped her
Jerry
bags on the kitchen
Ice.
linoleum and retreated to the bedroom. I sighed and got tucking them all away. Once I finished, I curled up on the couch and flipped the TV on, some ambient noise to distract my troubled thoughts. I woke up groggy the next morning, back stiff as plywood and aching. The first thing I did was grab my phone and dial the rental company. I'm sorry, Mr. Baker. Whoever hung that note on your door has nothing to do with us, the peppy voice on the other side of the line told me once I explained the situation. As far as we're concerned, you and your wife are wonderful tenants. Thanks, I said, and then sighed. Thanks a lot. She suggested a ring light if the problem continued. At least we could catch who was doing it. It didn't seem that helpful to catch my already dead landlord in the act, but by now the shock of seeing him had faded into a practical self-preservation. I must have been seeing things. I was half asleep after all. I brought the idea up to Shelley over coffee. And how do you plan to pay for that exactly? Her withering stare told me just how she felt about the idea, but she kept going regardless. Dig into our savings that's barely enough to cover a deposit for a new apartment, not pay your half of utilities, no groceries this month. Sorry. I held my hands up. I'm just freaking out. It's nothing, obviously. Just a prank. Okay. All right. You're probably right. She flashed a smile at me. One of those short, sweet smiles that reminded me of 20 years old. Of fall nights by the fire pits, smoke stinging my nose, alcohol making my lips buzz until they found their way to hers. Leaves crunched as we laid back on the half-frozen grass, and even then, I knew I lived forever in that moment, if I could. The world wasn't that simple, though, or that kind. Shelley grabbed her purse and left for work without saying goodbye. There was another note the next day, And the day after that, I didn't bother sharing them with my wife, convinced it would only cause us more issues in our already fragile relationship. Each day she leveled her eyes on me silently over breakfast, daring me to speak. Have you thought any more about my idea? I finally asked on Friday morning. I stayed up overnight to catch whoever was leaving the notes, but had drifted off early in the morning and woke up to another notice like clockwork. One
One
day.
day.
My eyes were red and I felt drunk with fatigue. I wouldn't have brought it up otherwise, as it was. I barreled on without a thought towards consequence. About, you know, seeing a therapist, I mean. I think it would do us some good. My wife stood and threw her half-full bowl of cereal in the sink. She was out the door before I could even muster some sort of half-hearted apology. Hell, I'm not sure I would have been able to even if I tried. I called into work that morning and spent the afternoon dozing off on the couch. A little after 1, I was jarred awake by the sound of a door creaking open and then slamming shut out in the hallway. Miss McCleary, our elderly neighbor. Rushing to the door, I caught her just as she shuffled past our apartment. She jumped when she saw me before letting out a good-natured laugh and waving a hand my way. "Oh, Henry, you're gonna give an old lady a heart attack." "I'm sorry, Miss McCleary," I said sheepishly. "I was just hoping to talk to you. I've been getting strange notes on my door and, well, it's starting to freak me out. I was wondering if you've seen anything." "Notes?" Thick eyebrows creased, extenuating the deep wrinkles lining her face. "What sort of notes?" "Oh, nothing really. It's just that they're signed in Jerry's name and I." "Oh, poor Jerry." She clamped her hand down over her chest, shaking her head so that her gray bun on her scalp bounced along like a half-deflated balloon. "What a terrible thing that was. They never did catch who did it, did they?" "Not that I know of. The murder had been featured on the news for all of 3 days. No updates, no sobbing, no relatives. It seemed a middle-aged slumlord didn't make for a compelling crime victim narrative, even when he ended up stabbed 5 times and carved up like Thanksgiving turkey." "It's just horrible. Something that fish is happening to someone you know. Someone you see every month on the dot. Oh my, listen to me being so selfish." She shook her head before reaching out to put a hand on my shoulder. "How's poor Shelley taking it?" she asked, frowning. "I know they were close." "Close?" As far as I knew, they hadn't even spoken since we signed the lease. The rent was direct deposited, and if anything went wrong around the apartment, I was the one to call it in. My face must have said it all. The old woman shuffled her feet and gave a helpless shrug. "Last summer, I saw him spending a lot of time over in your apartment. I just, well, I just assumed." "Right," I said, forcing my face back into a forced grin. "Of course. I better be getting back. Have a good day, Miss McCleary." The world spun as I stumbled back to my apartment, closing the door firmly behind me, leaning back against it. Last summer? That was when it all begun, wasn't it? Shelley and I's marital issues? Not that we were ever the perfect couple or anything. We fought, We bickered, we got mean and petty, but we always came back together. Always realized what we had was stronger than anything that might wedge itself between us. Or at least that's how it felt until last summer. Shelly was working from home for about 4 months when the pandemic kicked off. I was the one of the lucky few who had to stay in person. To be honest, I was jealous at first. She teased me about her newfound freedom. I'd joke back that the outside world had already forgotten about her. Eventually, she stopped laughing. It was a stressful time. Everyone was struggling. Nothing we couldn't shake off. At least that's what I thought. It wasn't until far later that I realized something deep in our foundation had shifted. Something I might never get back. Something having to do with that freaking Jerry visiting my wife while I was gone. A part of me snapped. A nagging suspicion that'd been buried deep within me pulsed. The optimistic composure keeping it at bay finally eroding, allowing it to bubble to surface. I knocked over the end table, kicked the edge of the couch. Shelly's coffee mug from the morning sat abandoned on the kitchen island, and I sent it flying, shattering against the wall and splattering what looked like dried blood in streaks down into the carpet. I wasn't done with my rampage. Stalking into the bedroom, I let loose on her dresser, tugging each drawer out, its contents spilling against the ugly beige carpet. Panties, socks, her seasonal clothes she'd soon be digging out. What was I expecting to find? Love letters tucked into her belongings? Jerry's lumpy face staring back at me? Who could say? All I knew was that I needed to keep moving. Once I finished with the dresser, I got to work on the closet, ripping her nice shirts, work slacks from their hangers, shifting each pair of shoes. The bathroom was equally empty, so I took comfort in pouring her $80 shampoo down the drain instead. Each barb, each prickled response from the last year poked at my skin like a needle. A tattoo of resentment embedded in my body that I just realized was now a permanent part of me. Don't be an idiot, Henry. God, could you be more careless? You think I like it when you touch me? Stumbling back into the living room, I caught sight of the clock on the microwave. 5:15. She should be home any minute. Once she saw the destruction I left, well, that might just be it for us. I finally caught sight of her laptop laying on the desk in the corner. Would she admit to Jerry? Doubtful. She never took responsibility for the things she did, the way she contributed to our fights and arguments. But I needed this. I needed to know. Her password was her great-grandmother's birthday. She used it for everything, from her online accounts to her debit card PIN. I'd always nag her to change it, but this time I was grateful. The computer booted right up, opening to her Gmail account when I clicked open the browser. I only had to scroll for a few seconds to have my worst suspicion confirmed. Jerry freaking Eisen. I opened the thread and started from the beginning. At first, it seemed straightforward. The AC had gone out last summer. She reached out to him directly while I was at work. His response was clipped, straightforward, as I would have expected. It was her reply a few days after. The fact that made my blood boil. It was really nice to get to know you a little bit better the other day. It's been really tough being stuck around the house all by myself. If you ever want to stop by again, just to chat, you're always welcome. The messages progressed, getting more flirtatious, passionate. I don't think I ever kissed a woman as beautiful as you are, Jerry wrote sometime last December. You have no idea how lucky I feel to be with you. What did she see in this human bag of cottage cheese? I couldn't fathom it, but each email just confirmed she was an equal participant in this little affair. She seemed just as into it as he did. Eventually, they broached the topic of divorce. Divorce! The word I've been avoiding, thinking, let alone speaking for months now. My stomach twisted inside of me. It's not the right time, she told him, but it will be soon. Let's talk about it tonight, yeah? By that time, she'd been back in the office. How many after-work dinner meetings did she have since she'd been back? A couple a month at least. 2 weeks passed until the next email, a short, clipped message sent from her. Well, are you going to do it or not? It doesn't feel right, Shelley, Jerry wrote. I love you. I just don't think I can do something like this. There has to be another way. That was sent 2 months ago, followed 2 days later by, honey, please, can we talk about this? I don't want to lose you. Then, baby, please answer. A day later. Then, nothing. For at least a week, until Shelley finally wrote back. I'm sorry, honey. You're right. I thought of another way. You don't have to worry about a thing. Can I see you tonight? I missed you so bad. The winking emoji at the end made me gag. And then I noticed the date. September 17th, the day Jerry was killed. I slammed the laptop shut and stumbled away from it, tugging at my hair as if the pain might shock me back into reality. No, there was no way. Even if we didn't always sleep in bed together, I would have noticed if my wife disappeared for the night. Come back bloody? I would have noticed if she murdered someone, but something about the date was sticking in my mind. Shelley still wasn't home. Now, it was an hour since she would usually arrive. No calls, no text. Had she left for good? Maybe that was for the best. Maybe it was for the best that I left too. There was an old duffel bag at the top of our closet, wrinkled and covered in a thin layer of dust. It wouldn't carry much, but enough to get me through a couple of days. I couldn't stay here, not until I figured out what was going on. I tossed it on the bed and tore through my clothes. I was just turning the corner to the bathroom when I heard it. 3 raps, slow and steady, coming from the front door. I glanced at my phone. Only 7:15 p.m. He was early, just like he always started harassing us about rent 3 days before it was due. Even dead, he was a freaking jerk. I'm leaving. The waver in my voice made me feel small, pathetic. Everything about this situation did. You hear that? I'm leaving, okay? Just blow off. You can have her. A beat of silence followed my declaration, and then the telltale sound of the deadbolt sliding clean. The door swung open, crashing into the plaster and leaving a shattered, punctured wound. But all I could see was Jerry and his sunken pancake face and glassy eyes. A cheap, ill-tailored suit hung off of his doughy frame, dirt-stained and torn. Something black and viscous was seeping through his white button-up, and the smell of it made me gag. He shambled forward and swung the door closed behind him. I'm leaving, I pleaded, stumbling back into the hall. His knees stuck out at odd angles as he had advanced. I spun and flew through the bedroom door, slamming it behind me. It had a lock on the knob, but nothing that would survive a few solid slams. Jamming my shoulder into the nearby dresser, I shoved it in front of the door as a makeshift barrier. It was hardly any more sturdy than the door was. My phone! Where's my phone? Freak! I left it on the sofa. What was I supposed to tell the cops anyway? My zombie landlord had it out for me? I paced back and forth, clawing at my hair. Jerry collided with the door on the other side, howling in rage. It's not my fault, I shouted out at him, or at least I meant to shout. It came out more like a whimper than a roar. Shelley, my beautiful, sweet Shelley. No, that wasn't the wife I'd known over the last year. Had she ever been that hag of a woman at all? The door splintered, the frame shook. I had to get out of here. If not, I'd suffer the same fate as Jerry, if not worse. The window, it was my only option. A straight 2-story drop, but it was better than the fate that awaited me here. I grabbed the end table from the side of the bed, hoisting it above my head with a huff and throwing it full might towards the glass. We never could get the damn thing open, not since we moved in. If we hadn't been so down on our luck, we might have kicked up a bigger fuss about it. I should have called Jerry on his crap ages ago. The glass cracked, splintered, but stayed in place. I picked it up again and swung for the fences. This time, it shattered outward like raindrops glittering against the dusky night sky. I knocked out the remaining few paces, worked up my nerve. There in the parking lot, headlights shining bright, sat my wife. Shadows created craters in her face, masking her expression. I swear I saw a smile though. Jerry shoved his way through the shattered door. I sucked in a breath and dove. Shards of glass bit into my skin, and something in my left leg popped like confetti, like a cannon. Screams tore from my lips, but adrenaline pulled me upward, moved me forward. By the time I made it to my feet, Shelley's car was gone. That was a couple of days ago, and though the immediate danger has waned, the shock and disbelief has taken root deep inside me. I managed to hobble to a gas station and get a buddy to pick me up. He wasn't surprised to hear we've been having problems, nor that I needed a place to crash for a while. As for the rest of it, well, it was just too strange to admit to. I can hardly believe it myself. But the danger is over now, or at least I thought it was, until I woke up this morning to find a torn piece of stationery hanging on the front door.
Henry Baker. Final notice.
I think it's time I got out of here. Jeez, what a tale. I guess the moral of the story would be trust your instincts and be aware of those you keep close, or you will end up close to death. What are your thoughts, my creepy fam? I would like to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Please subscribe, like, and hit that bell icon so you can receive notifications for more stories to come. As always, my ghouls, you never know what goes bump in the night.